Hello, and welcome back to Glitterature Alley. I am Tootight Lautrec, the former drag laureate of the Sanitarium and the current Mistress of Glitterature Alley, and here we are once again at the bottom of the down staircase in the permanently sequestered remainders section of an unnamed local library which may or may not have two stone lions on the front steps who may look stately and respectable. But if they were in fact flesh and blood lions, and hungry, they wouldn't hesitate a moment to rip you limb from limb and gobble you up as if you were just wet kibble. Just something to keep in mind. Today, we are here once again at Pulitzer Who to discuss another Pulitzer Prize winning novel of which I have never heard. And this will be the last discussion for a little while because, like those literary lions, I think I have bitten off a little bit more than I can chew. I'm not as fast of a reader as I had hoped to be, and the last book was almost 600 pages. This is 500 pages, and I've just met my limit, and so I'm going to have to take a little bit of a break for the moment, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. In any case, we are here today to discuss the 1933 winner of the Pulitzer Prize for the novel, The Store by T.S. Stribling. And here's another one of those beautiful Franklin Library leather-bound books that I love to look at but hate to read because I don't like hardcovers. But before we get into The Store, let's look at other novels that were published in 1932. And there are a number of novels that I will not mention, and I've seen them over and over again because they were never in contention for the Pulitzer Prize. And those are the Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys and the Tarzan novels and the Wizard of Oz, novels, Ellery Queen and Charlie Chan. Those have all been passed over because almost every year they have come out in the 20s and 30s and they're never considered for the Pulitzer Prize, so I don't mention them. So I thought I'd mention them here. But of the ones that may have been in contention, published in 1932, were Light in August by William Faulkner, Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder, Save Me the Waltz by Zelda Fitzgerald, Sons by Pearl S. Buck, State Fair by Phil Strong, Tobacco Road by Erskine Caldwell, 1919, which was the second in the USA trilogy by John Dos Passos, and Young Lonigan by James T. Farrell. But the Pulitzer Prize for the novel in 1933 goes to The Store by T.S. Stribling. Thomas Sigismund Stribling, born March 4th, 1881, and he lived until July 8th, 1965. He was born in Clifton, Tennessee. His father fought in the Civil War for the Union, and his mother's family fought for the Confederacy. So I bet those Thanksgivings were really fun. He spent summers at his mother's family farm in Alabama, where he set many of his novels, including The Store. His father attempted to dissuade him from becoming a writer so that he could get a real job. And so for 1 year, he went to school, and for a year he became a teacher, and then he went back to school, and for 2 years he became a lawyer. But when it was discovered that he was using office supplies, time, and billing hours in the legal office to write fiction, he was invited to leave. So he started out writing for pulp magazines, but then turned to what he called serious fiction to, and I quote, tell the truth about the Negro problem in America. And so most of his books are critiques of the discriminatory practices in the North and the South. And The Store is the second in a trilogy called the Vaden Trilogy, and it's considered social satire of 3 generations of the fictional Vaden family during the Civil War and the Reconstruction South. So the story is set in 1884, Florence, Alabama, a real place. And even though it won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, the libraries in Florence and nearby Tuscumbia refused to carry the book, and the residents of Florence, Alabama, actually considered filing a lawsuit against Stribling for libel because the depictions of their vile and virulent racism were a little too close for comfort for them. When Stribling learned of the legal action against him, he actually contributed $100 to the libel fund against himself as a final howdy-do to the citizens of Florence. But I did not know any of this when I picked the book up, and so the casual and ubiquitous racism sprinkled in with a rather mean jocularity really shocked me. And there is in this book the ever-present racial slur, the one with the double G in the middle. And no, I'm not talking about faggot, that slur with the double G in it, because that slur is, spoiler alert, that slur is a slur for the demographic to which I belong, for those of you who may not have guessed. So faggot is not the slur I mean, it's the other one with the two G's. And faggot isn't mentioned because, one, there are no characters in the novel to whom that slur could apply, and two, everybody knows that there's no such thing as homosexuality among white Southern gentlemen. Just ask Lindsey Graham. So, the double G slur, it's everywhere. And it's not just a term of common use. It's a term used to denigrate, to dehumanize, and to justify the dehumanization of former slaves, who, according to many of even the kindest white people in the novel, those former slaves would be better off as slaves, they think, and they should not be educated because people who are kept uneducated and poor are easier to control. Sound a little familiar, 2025? Just saying. So there are a multitude of characters in the store, but it most closely follows one character, Colonel Miltiades Vaden, also called the Colonel, also called Milt. And he is despicable. He's a racist and a rapist. He's a loser, a liar, and a thief. But in some strange sleight of hand by Stribling, he is not a pure villain. He's a loser, but he doesn't know why he's a loser, and like a lot of losers, he imagines that it's somebody else's fault. So, because of that, let's take a look a little bit at unlikable characters in fiction. I was thinking about this as I was reading it, that probably the most appropriate unlikable character to think about is Nabokov's character Humbert, who is the narrator of Lolita. And because Lolita is told in first person singular, Humbert is the narrator, and because he is an expert seducer, his wit, his humor, and his facility with language draws you in immediately, and you kind of want to believe what he says, and you're sort of ready to get onto his side. And the beauty of reading Lolita, besides the amazing language, is the dawning realization that you get as a reader, where you're reading along and you think, hey, wait, what? No. What? No. No, 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 no. But by that time, the action is set in motion, and you read along to see if Humbert ever gets his comeuppance. So with the store, this novel is told in third person, so you see Milt Vaden from a distance, and at the same time you get to see his full humanity at a distance too. He is despicable, but he's also human, and there are moments where you actually feel for him and get on his side, which is Stribling's real strength as a writer. He creates complicated, fully rounded characters of every color, whether it's pure white, off-white, almost white, not that black, sort of black, plainly black, or midnight black. All of his characters feel like full human beings, and that's to Stribling's strength. And none of his characters ever cross into the territory of pure saint or pure villain. So my suggestion, if you're a writer, is that if you do create a character who is unlikable, you have to have something about that character that people can latch on to as human. He has to have, or she has to have vulnerabilities. Humor helps. But if you're not able to create a character that's fully human, you escape the goal of fiction, which is to explore the human experience fully. Villains and saints, pure villains and saints, end up being kind of boring because they're very easy to dismiss, and you don't want that if you're a writer. So, what is the story of the story? Picture it. 1883, small town in the Reconstruction South, where everyone is much poorer than they were before, because the plantation system has been upended and replaced by the sharecropper system, which may be just as bad for the former slaves. There are a variety of classes of all races. There are well-to-do whites who look down upon their poorer white neighbors. There are light-skinned black people who look down upon their darker friends, co-workers, and relatives. And the ones who are looked down upon resent and resist in various ways those who are looking down upon them. So, Milt Vaden was a colonel in the Confederate Army. And he was, right after the end of the war, very high up in the Ku Klux Klan, America's first terrorist organization. But the war is over, and his time in the Klan didn't last very long. And now he lives off the meager inheritance of his overweight wife. Turns out that store owners are the only ones who seem to have any kind of stability or wealth, and Milt, needing money, debases himself and takes a job as a clerk at the only store in the town, which is owned by someone named Jay Handback, who years earlier had cheated Milt out of thousands of dollars in cotton profits. So, as a clerk, Milt is the only one who treats the black people fairly. He does not shortchange them ever, and he does not put his thumb on the scale when he's weighing out produce, so a pound of bacon is an actual pound of bacon. And Handback sees this because all the black people, when they come into shop, always go to Milt and to nobody else because they know he'll give them a fair shake for some reason or other. Handback sees this and takes Milt off of the register and makes him in charge of the books. Then, through a series of plotting and good luck, Milt manages to steal about $50,000 from Handback, ruins him, gets his revenge for the dirty deeds done years earlier, and is able to buy his own store. But all of this takes place in the first quarter of the novel. Meanwhile, Handback keeps a mistress, a light-skinned former slave of the Vaden family, so her name is Gracie Vaden. And she's light-skinned because Milt's father had raped Gracie's mother, producing Gracie. So Gracie Vaden is actually Milt's half-sister. And when they were younger, when Milt and Gracie were younger, now they're about 40 years old, 40 or 50 years old, when they were younger, after being jilted by one Drusilla Crownshield for a richer man, Milt rapes Gracie. And when she has a very white-looking son named Toussaint, Milt thinks that the son is the child of a Yankee named Beekman who had kept Gracie during that time. But Toussaint is not Beekman's son. Toussaint is Milt's son. So he's Milt's son and his nephew, apparently. So it's complicated. Milt doesn't find out that Toussaint is his son until you'll have to read and find out on your own if you're really that curious. So, in this novel, there are reversals of fortune. There is social stigma, up, down, back, and forth, all along every economic and racial power line that you can imagine. And so you may ask, Tootight Lautrec, Master Mistress of Glitterature Alley. What drives the action? Well, everybody's struggle to become more prosperous drives the action, and because everybody's lives are so deeply intertwined with everybody else's, this is what keeps the novel going forward, despite the hideousness of the racist Reconstruction South. And because of this, this makes for a pretty good story. Now, Stribling does use dialect in varying degrees throughout this, and while I do consider dialect as my hobgoblin that keeps me on edge, as I spoke about a little bit more eloquently in Scarlet Sister Mary, the dialects in here vary among all the social classes. So there can be 2 or 3 different dialects among the white people, as well as 2 or 3 dialects among the black people. The black people who are strivers and have attempted to educate themselves, which disgusts all the white people because they feel that that shouldn't be allowed to happen. They speak similarly to some of the white people. So it's a very nuanced sort of use of dialect, and I applaud Stribling for doing that. So what kept me reading and what stopped me reading? Well, a lot of things happen in this novel. And at night, in bed with Dr. Frankenstein, my gasps and ejaculations, while I was reading the novel, my gasps and ejaculations practically scared the iambic pentameter right out of Dr. Frankenstein. So it is quite good. And I did want to keep reading. There's humor and there's humanity, and it makes me feel. It made me feel a lot of different things, not all of them good, many of them very bad, but it kept me reading. And I do have to say that the virulent racism was tough to get through. We get much more of Gracie and her son Toussaint in the fullness of their humanity toward the end of the novel. And I think that if Stribling had placed more of his black characters toward the beginning of the novel and shown their full humanity right from the start, it would be able to fit into that category of social satire, because then we would all be in on the joke. But as it is, they don't come in till the end, and I think that may be one of its failings. Qualms. Now, excuse me. I think I need to adjust my hat. I have mentioned racism as a qualm, but in a novel about the racist Reconstruction South, it is actually almost necessary, albeit extremely off-putting. Some reviewers took exception to Stribling's use of coincidence, which I have warned about before. But using these coincidences to affect the reversals of fortune may be a flaw, but it's one that I was okay with, because things do happen in life and they did feel more organic than just simple coincidences, but other reviewers found it not so palatable. And there was a mystical element to the denouement, which normally would put me off completely. But it, again, felt to be fitting for a novel that takes place in the religious and superstitious South among people who believed in certain things like that. And for me, it just kind of worked. It worked very well. And I didn't have a problem with it. And because so much happened at the end, and that I was genuinely overcome with emotion. And because of all this, I accepted all of these qualms as part of the whole, and none of it really bothered me. Do I recommend it? I do recommend it. If you can stand reading about vile, cruel, inhumane treatment of people, of which the human race is capable, we know every day by watching the news. If you can stand that, then this book might be for you, because it is coupled with humor and humanity and lots of action. So I almost feel that it might be necessary to read this in this day and age just to expose the casual ways in which dehumanizing people is happens throughout our history, and it's disturbing but somewhat necessary. So that is The Store by B.S. Stribling. And I, having raced to put this video out, and you can see that I'm reading my notes quite extensively, need to take a pause so that I can catch up with myself. You see my stack of books here. I'll give you a hint of what I'll be reading. The Lamb in His Bosom, which is about 400 pages. Now in November by Josephine Wilson, which is about 300 pages. Honey in the Horn, almost 400 pages. And oof, goodness gracious. In This Our Life, 600 pages. So I've got some reading to do, and I've got some catching up to do. So this, I'd like to have a couple of more videos, books read and videos in the can before I start filming again, or before I start posting again. So maybe this will take me to, I don't know, July, maybe August, fingers crossed. In the meantime, though, I will have to go off somewhere up in the North Sea area to visit my sister, Sister Mary Rosebud, where I will gather my thoughts in the cloistered convent of curious souls, which is, by the way, discalced. So I'm getting ready already. I'll be at the cloistered convent of curious souls, discalced, with my sister, Sister Mary Rosebud, to collect myself. And in the interim, maybe you can feel free to browse through some of my 109 lip syncs that I have made. I have a playlist of lip syncs where Sister Mary Rosebud occurs, as well as other relatives like my brother Eustace T. Luce and my friend Fabrice McQueef and other various distant cousins, and of course me. So you can browse that while I'm gone, or maybe my overseer, Joe O'Malley, may pop in for a video or two, which I don't know, have I mentioned it? He happens to have a book coming out. This is the advanced review copy of his novel Starlight and Moonshine by Joseph O'Malley. So he may be popping in to talk about this one or two things. If you want to look at the Kirkus review of Starlight and Moonshine, help yourself. Maybe make a little Starlight martini if you can drink responsibly. This is one of the stars of the book. And possibly I may do a makeup video or something like that. You can let me know in the comments if you'd like to see any of that stuff. But until we meet again, I'm going to start out my vacation fueling myself before I get on the plane up to the North Sea. And until then, I have only one thing to say. You better look for that wonder that is in your world and pay attention. Until we meet again, enjoy your summer. I am Tootight Lautrec. Mwah. Drink responsibly, y'all.